Hello, my name is Pastor Kathy. I'm the pastor of Pleasant Valley Lutheran Church near Malabar Farm and St. Paul Lutheran Church in Lucas. Greetings. We are reading through the Bible with commentary. We are in Genesis chapter 39. We heard about Abraham and then Isaac and then Jacob. Jacob ended up with 4 wives and 12 sons. And the favorite son, though, was Joseph, who had some kind of special robe, and his brothers got jealous and sold him into slavery to Egypt. And then we heard about one of the brothers, Judah, not doing too well by his daughter-in-law, Tamar. And now we're back to Joseph again. So Joseph, chapter 39. Now Joseph was taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. So even though he's a slave, he can become a success because slavery was so widely accepted. And even with 1,000 years later with the Roman Empire, being a slave could be an absolutely miserable thing, or it could be a thing that you had the opportunity to really build yourself some value and even buy your freedom. So he can be successful even as a slave. He became a successful man. He was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him. He made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. And the credit is given to the Lord. The fact that God is with Joseph is why he is successful. From the time that he made him overseer of his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had, in house and in field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and with him there he had no concern for anything but the food that he ate. So Potiphar was living easy because he had Joseph taking care of everything. Now Joseph was handsome and good looking, which is what they said about his mother Rachel. And after a time his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, with me here my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my hand. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept anything from me, except yourself, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" So Joseph is very clear, this is unacceptable. I'm running everything, and I'm happy to be running everything, and my master's happy with me. I'm happy with him. It's a good arrangement. I'm not going to screw it all up by fooling around with you. And although she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not consent to lie beside her or to be with her. So there are places and lots of churches who have policies that say you cannot have one adult leader with one kid. And this is why. Because even if nobody does anything wrong, all it takes is one accusation to ruin the reputation of the adult leader. So even if it's a female leader with a female kid, male with male, it doesn't matter. A good policy is to always have 2 or more people with 2 or more kids. And here is why. One day, however, when he went into the house to do his work, and while no one else was in the house, she caught hold of his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. And it's a shame that even though he was in charge, he could have had somebody else with him maybe, but no. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, she called out to the members of her household and said to them, "See, my husband has brought among us a Hebrew to insult us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice." Because if the woman does not cry out, then she must be guilty. So she's saying, "Look, I'm crying out. I'm the innocent person here. He heard me raise my voice and cry out. He left his garment beside me and fled outside. Then she kept his garment by her until his master came home. And she told him the same story, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came in to me to insult me. But as soon as I raised my voice and cried out, because I'm innocent, raised my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." Verse 19. When his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, saying, "This is the way your servant treated me," he became enraged. It is not clear if he is enraged at Joseph or if he's enraged at his wife, and now he's lost a really good servant who's taking care of everything. Or maybe he's just mad about the situation. Maybe he isn't happy with either one of them. Either way, he became enraged. Verse 20, and Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. He remained there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love. He gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. The chief jailer committed to Joseph's care all the prisoners who were in the prison, and whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The chief jailer paid no heed to anything that was in Joseph's care, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. So all the way through, Joseph is just being faithful to serve the people he's under, faithful to serve his father, faithful to serve his master, faithful to serve the jailer, not necessarily happy about where he is. But Joseph is one of those stories about how terrible things happen, and then looking back much, much later, you can say, oh, it is good that this terrible thing happened. And so often in life, a terrible thing happens, and it's just this terrible, terrible thing. How could this thing happen? When we're in the middle of the thing, we can't look and say, oh, I'm so glad this terrible thing is happening. We say, no, we hate this terrible thing. It does not say that Joseph liked what was happening, but it does say that even in the midst of what was happening, he was faithful and the Lord was with him. Chapter 40. The dreams of two prisoners. Some time after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker offended their lord, the king of Egypt, also known as Pharaoh. And the cupbearer and the baker are very important positions because they control the food that is going to the king. So they have to be trustworthy, because being poisoned was a very real possibility for somebody who was in power and authority. If somebody wants to assassinate them, one of the best and easiest way to do it is to poison them. And oh, they died with a stomach ache, and now somebody else can come in and take power. So you needed to be able to trust your cupbearer, that's the one bringing him his cup of wine, or your baker who's bringing you your food. Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he waited on them, and they continued for some time in custody. One night they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each his own dream, and each dream with its own meaning. So it was pretty widely accepted back in the ancient Near East. If you had dreams, it could be God speaking to you, especially if you had the dream more than once. Verse 6. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast today?" They said to him, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." So it's not that Joseph is saying, I'm not the one, it's God, but God is the one that's with me, and let's hear what they are. So verse 9, so the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms came out, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." Then Joseph said to him, This is its interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. So lift up your head is an expression. Basically, if you imagine bowing down to the ground, especially in an Eastern kind of way of bowing, then the ruler could lift up your head to look at him, usually a him, not always. To lift up your head is to give honor and to say, okay, you don't have to be bowing down, you can stand up to me. But it also has a greater expression of getting him out of jail and putting him back where he belonged before. Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But remember me when it is well with you. Please do me the kindness to make mention of me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this place. For in fact I was stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should have put me into the dungeon. So Joseph is like, don't forget that I'm here, I'm innocent. I was sold into slavery unfairly. I never did anything wrong, and here I am stuck here in the prison. So remember me when you're back in there with Pharaoh. Verse 16. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered, this is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head from you, and will hang you on a pole, and the birds will eat the flesh from you. So you will lift up your head as a pun. Before it was lift up your head because you bow down and the Pharaoh lifts up your head and gives you honor. But in this case, lifts up your head by removing your head from your body and lifts you up on a pole. So also lifts up your head. Very negative though. So a bit of a pun. 20. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of his chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his cupbearing, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But the chief baker he hanged, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. And we are going to stop there for today, and tomorrow we will hear about 2 years later when the cupbearer all of a sudden remembers Joseph. So not only is Joseph in jail for things he did not do, with no trial and no chance of getting out of jail, he's there quite a while. Like he's there a minimum of 3 years, minimum. And so sometimes when we have very hard things happen, they take a while to get resolved. And when we're in the middle of the hard thing, we can be like, where is God? But it says all the way through this story that God was with Joseph. He was with Joseph in Potiphar's house. He was with Joseph in the jail. And Joseph was being faithful to do what he was given to do. So tomorrow we will hear about him finally being remembered by the cupbearer. But that's not till tomorrow. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord look at you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace, serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.